it's TK Irish, and man, is this going to be fun today. You know, we always have to have some happy camper guests at our podcast, and we get a large variety of people here, but this person, I mean, has done it all. I mean, he's been with uh, building homes for Habitat for Humanity. He's increased the knowledge of reading by being part of a team called Half Price Books. But most importantly, he's been in the trenches. He's been a wait person, a bartender, all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, if not more. So, you got to say this is a we call a Renaissance man. That, in other words, is whatever he has a topic to talk about, he'll talk about it with some sort of flair. Uh, that's really what makes it so much fun. So, welcome our new happy camper, and Doug, the neighbor here, has something to say.
TK, so good to see you, and a beautiful introduction to a longtime friend of mine in Dallas. His name is Steven Seybold, and we have many, many travels and things that we have accomplished together. And I'm very happy to have him as our 10th happy camper on the Camp Kennerk podcast, and this will be podcast number 51. Can you believe we're doing 51 and now our 10th Camp Kennerk Happy Camper interview, and we're really looking forward to it. And I'm very, very proud. He's a longtime friend, goes way, way back. Almost, he's a brother just like you. Steve Seybold, please. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing really well this day, even though it's sleet apocalypse.
That's funny. It's the same thing down here. TK, what do you got up there in your part of the world?
I'm not too far from you, Stephen. I'm just south of Dallas. So we're getting to the same type of precipitation, a little ice, a lot of cold weather with a threat of some snow. But hey, we're in a podcast, so everything's great. I don't care what's going on outside because talking to you, Stephen, and getting to know you and welcome you to the Camp Kennerk podcast family.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to it, I think.
You shouldn't. Don't do that. Stephen, don't do that, please.
No thinking. No thinking. Go around here.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. Stephen, you are there in Dallas, and I lived in Dallas for many, many years. And where did you go to high school?
To Thomas Jefferson High School, which at that time was North Dallas.
Okay. And were you the Lions, Tigers, or Bears?
See, at that time we were the Rebels because I graduated in '69. And several years later, they changed it to the Patriots because we had a rebel flag that we would run up and down the field at football games that also I never went to. But it was not, the Stars and Bars became not quite such a good thing to be proud of.
I completely understand that. Now, I got to Dallas in about 1971, July of 1971, and about January, March of 72, I started working at J. Alfred's restaurant, and that is where we met there on Oak Lawn. Do you have anything to say about J. Alfred's?
Because it was a fun place to work. It was a restaurant and bar. Don't forget the bar side of it. And I started hanging out there. I would take a book and read, and they had a jazz group that played, I think, on Sunday nights, which was really great. And I would just sit there and read and listen to some great jazz. And after a while, Rob Buckman, who was the manager, noticed me coming in frequently reading and finally offered me a job as, at that point, of what they called the cook. And mostly it was just making sandwiches. And after a period of time, I graduated to bartending, which was the demise of my life for about 15 or 20 years. Way too much fun. Way too much fun.
Well, that's very interesting you say that because when I got to Dallas and I sold auto parts for a while, and then things got slim, and I worked for Kip's Big Boy up on Forest Lane, and went out drinking one night and ended up in J. Alfred's, and there was a small sign on the bulletin board that said, "If you have a college degree and you are broke, see Tom Garrison," who was the manager at the time. And he put me to work in the kitchen making those ham sandwiches because I had worked at Kip's Big Boy in the restaurant business, and then I graduated to being a bartender, and that's how we worked. And of course, Rob, I don't think, yeah, I don't think Rob was a manager when I got there. There was a lot of things that came to confluence at the same time there, but that's when we met.
Yeah. Tom had left by the time I got to J. Alfred's, although I did get to know him later because I worked at the Stoneleigh P, which he owned later.
With Gene Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I ended up working at the old church and at Bully's, and also sold auto parts with Gene Street because that was his day job, Mermont. And he thought I had a college degree, and I'd already sold insurance with the Prudential back in El Paso. And he said, "Well, can you sell auto parts, shock absorbers, and that sort of stuff?" And I said, "Sure." So I went to work for Mermont, and that's how we all said. Now there was Rob, who was managing. There was Dick Malak, who was bartending. You and me. And then there was Mike. What was Mike's last name?
Mike Lowry.
Mike Lowry. I believe he's still up there. He's up in Kansas City now.
Yep. And also Gino. Wasn't Gino there?
Oh, Gino. And there was so
Gino?
many other things. And do you remember Karen Bella, who sang great music there? And she wrote a song on her album called J. Alfred's.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yes, and a couple of people are talking, and she's talking about the place on Oak Lawn. It was a lot of fun and really good, and that's how we met. And then what happened, Stephen?
A period of time, it was, and I'm thinking, so it was 73, I think it was, that five of us decided, well, let's save up some money. It was probably in 72 that we decided to save up some money. And five of us who all worked at J. Alfred's decided, let's go to Europe together. And there was, some of us were there for about 6 weeks, others, I think 8 or 10. We flew over, we actually flew Icelandic Airways, which I don't even know if it's still around. I think it was $200 round trip in a sardine can. None of us were under 6 foot, so that was always a challenge for all of us. And we flew to Luxembourg, and then we took the train up to Amsterdam and bought a van. And the five of us drove around Europe. Great trip. Great trip.
Now, Stephen, I'm finding this very interesting. I just can imagine the five waiters telling the general manager, "Hey, we're going to go take vacation, and we're really not sure when we'll be back, but just hold a space for us, you know." So the question is traveling around Europe, did any of you guys speak French or German or any languages of that nature?
Lived in Texas, and we were in Texas. I think we had learned uno más cerveza, and I don't know what, and donde es baño. And I think that's really all you need to know, which is, can I have another beer and where's the bathroom?
Now, do you ask that in that particular order? You know, I want a beer, then where's the bathroom?
First, then the bathroom, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure because, you know, we have to understand the rhythm of your travel plans.
Yes, but I don't think any of us really knew any French or Spanish other than really rudimentary Spanish.
You're correct, Stephen. None of us knew were fluent in anything other than Texan beer and bathroom. That was it. Now, to continue the story, we went from Amsterdam with the van down to Paris. Then we went to Ile de Ré, which is on the coast of the France, and then down to Bordeaux, and then into San Sebastian, Spain, just across the border. And we stayed at the Hotel London, and that is where we celebrated my 25th birthday.
I don't remember the name of the place. That's great. Yeah, my memory, your memory is much better than mine. But yeah, it was, and it was San Sebastian was on the northern coast, correct?
Yes, it's just
Yeah,
across Bordeaux with France, and then the
yeah,
border right there, and then San Sebastian right there.
yeah.
And the Hotel London, we stayed there. And by that time, we had all sharpened up our stories of we were a rock group, we were drug smugglers, we were cowboys, we were in a band, all sorts of stories. And we all read a couple of books while we traveling because we took turns driving the van. And one of the books was called The Wanderers by Mishner, James Mishner, which was all about traveling through Europe, the book. And so that was what inspired us to travel. And then, do you remember anything after San Sebastian, Spain?
We well, one thing I remember also after being in Paris, and I think it's why we went to San Sebastian, we said it's too freaking cold here. Let's go where it's warm. So we
Yes.
drove down through. We went to Madrid
Yes.
and then over to Gibraltar, where we split up into two groups. And I think it was me and Malak went up the Costa del Sol, and you and Buckman and Lowry went over to, oh, help me remember, Northern Africa.
Yes. Well, when we got to bottom of Spain, we were in a place called Algeciras, which
Yeah.
was the ferry over to Ceuta, which is in northern Africa. Then we took the bus down to Casablanca or something
I'm
like
trying to
that.
remember. Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we were the only white guys on this bus, and it was the local chicken milk run. So there were chickens and goats and families on it. We all sat at the back and really had a nice time with the people from Morocco. It was really nice. And then after a couple of days, we went back to Ceuta and then took the ferry back to Algeciras, and we met you in Barcelona.
Barcelona. Before we get to Barcelona, though, one of my greatest memories of y'all's trip into Africa, and so all of us were over 6 feet tall. Probably all of us were over 6'2".
Yes.
We were all big, tall people. But I remember, and I can't remember which one of you told Dick and I this story, but y'all were walking down the streets of Morocco somewhere, I think, and a bunch of kids came up to you, I mean a bunch, like it was 10 or 15 kids, and they were relatively probably, I guess, 8, 12, 15 years old, but none of them were big. But I remember them, you told us, they said, "You have big fists, we have many fists." And then y'all said, "We need
Absolutely.
to get out of here."
Absolutely true. Very good memory. Very, very good memory, Stephen. You have big fists. We have many fists. Yes.
Many fists.
And I think in 73, this was the period of Nixon, some sort
Yes,
of.
Nixon was in power. Yes.
So there
And
was.
there was some kind of nuclear threat as well at the time. And I can't remember what it was exactly, but there was we were not on good terms with Europe or Africa at that point. We as
Yes.
America.
Yes. And so when we got to the back into Spain, we felt very comfortable to be back there because the Spaniards liked us, and we, that sort of stuff. So we were very comfortable. And then we went to Barcelona, and we went out. We stayed on the Ramblas. We got a hostel on the Ramblas, and I think we checked in at night. I think we checked in. Now, I can't figure out how the two groups got back together prior to cell phones. Where did we meet? How did that happen?
I wish I could remember. Good point.
You know,
Because we had no way to contact each other. I guess before we departed, y'all, we had found somewhere in Barcelona to say, we'll meet you on this date at the train station. I truly don't remember.
the American Express office, because we were in and out of there.
Yeah,
So
maybe. I just don't remember.
that's right. But I do remember one night we went to a restaurant called Los Caracoles, which is, I believe, is still open. It's been around for 400 years, and it's there on the Ramblas of Barcelona. And then you walk through the kitchen. And there were like two tables in the kitchen. And I go, what the hell's going on? And we walked up, and then there was 4 floors of seating, and that was really, really good. And I remember, I think it was Barcelona. We went to a bar afterwards, and we were sitting at the bar, and they had all these tapas across the bar. Okay, now in Texas, when you see chips, popcorn dip, start. We didn't know that we're being charged a peseta for each olive, for each shrimp, or that sort of stuff. So when the bill came, it was this huge bill because there's 5 of us nibbling on all this stuff going through the thing. Now, this is great. This is great. So that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember we picked up, I think it was, I'll say 2 girls. They were sitting there.
They were studying tourism.
They were studying, and they were Spanish, right?
Yes, correct.
They were studying tourism, and through some sort of conversation with them, they were very fun, and they were very young, and we were just having fun with them. And I said something like, "Well, that's a bunch of bullshit." I said, "Bunch of bullshit," and the 2 girls were sitting there going, "What is this bullshit?" So then it became, well, caca de toro.
Yes. Yes, Caca de Toro.
De toro. So for the rest of the night, I can remember these 2 women saying caca de toro, caca de toro, caca de toro. Yes, that was. This is 1973, and this is 400 years later, and these are memories of young men, And then I do remember going and seeing the replica of Christopher Columbus's ship, the Santa Maria, the Pinto, the Chevrolet, whatever the hell it was. They're on the dock, and my impression was that Christopher Columbus was really, really crazy because that ship was so small.
And to go over across an ocean, you have no idea where it goes to.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's 2 things I remember distinctly from Barcelona. One was a really fun memory, and the other one's more of an interesting memory. But the fun one was going to the folk dances.
To the what?
The folk dances.
Oh, yes.
We went to there was a square, and they had folk dances they'd been doing for hundreds of years, and they formed a circle and danced around. We were standing there, the 5 of us, these 5 tall people, and they danced around. And there was one guy I remember is every time he came around, he would look at us and go, ka, 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 ka. And he would go back around and come back around and go, with his fingers pointing at us, go, ka, 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 ka. And we were like, what the heck is he doing? And finally, after the dance stopped, he came over and went, ka, 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 Tejas, Tejas.
Oh.
He knew we were from Texas, and we had not said a word to him, but probably one or 2 of us, or maybe all of us, had on cowboy boots. But the fact that we were all tall.
Yes.
And it was such a fun evening of watching that tradition and the beauty of that folk dance. It was really great. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the dance.
Okay.
I don't remember that, but I do remember that the hostel that we had checked into the middle of the night was on this big square. And it was in front of the church. I do remember it was in front of a church, and so probably the famous one there, whatever that is. And then, of course, since it's the church, our first night there, and not knowing this, the church bells went off every hour. And we're right next door. Boom! Boom! Boom!
Yes, yes. The
Yes.
pleasure of Christianity, yes, to
Yeah.
remind you every hour on the hour. Yeah, yeah. But the other memory, which was, again, the interesting memory, and I can't remember if you were with us or not going, we had gotten, or I had gotten tickets to see Miles Davis.
Oh, that's right.
And we went to a square, and there was an afternoon performance and an evening performance. And the girls had gone with us to see Miles Davis as well. We had gotten a bunch of tickets. I can't remember how many. Maybe it was enough for 7 of us, the 5 of us, 2 of them. But we were waiting for Miles to show up or for the afternoon because we had an evening ticket. And we found out after a while that they had held Miles Davis up at the border to search for drugs. And they had canceled the afternoon performance. And so it was only the evening performance. And we had had tickets for the afternoon performance. While we were waiting on this, and it was kind of like a square, and I can't remember where he was performing, but the crowd was getting rather loud and rambunctious. And down the side streets came Jeeps with soldiers armed with machine guns. And the girls, it was the policia, but the girls called them Franco's army because Franco was still in power. And the girls said after, we were probably there 30 minutes after the policia arrived, and they said, we need to leave because they were concerned about a riot and the police firing into the crowd. So we went, okay. So we left and we did not get to see Miles Davis, which broke my heart because I was a huge fan.
Well, isn't that a small world? Because Miles Davis's son lived around the corner from me on Bank Street. I would see him all the time. Yeah, small world
Okay.
story. Now, one of the things you keep leaving out of our details of tall Texans, 5 tall Texans, all over 6'2", that each of us had beards and long hair with 1973. So we really stood out.
True, true. I forget not only how tall we were, but how gruff we looked as well.
Now, after Barcelona, we went to Valencia, and I really liked Valencia. And then we went on up to Andorra and went through Andorra and then through the mountains and then through the southern France, through that area. And that was beautiful. And there was one little town there in southern France. And I remember that it was spelled AIX, AI, and it was a little teeny town. And there
Now,
was,
do you remember when we left each other?
yes, I'm getting to that right
Okay,
now.
good. Thank
And
you.
I think this was the whole problem was that when we got to this little French town, and it was so cute, it was really cute. There was a sign in the window at a bar tavern that they needed waiters. And I said, we're going to live here. So, so
Really?
yes, and then we went on to what was the name of the place? Marseille. And then I went back home. I don't know who came with me.
Rob and I went back to New York, and you went back to Toronto.
Yes, and then I went
Yeah,
back to Dallas. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I remember, I think Rob and I arrived in New York on Thanksgiving Day. The other thing is we had bought a bottle of Jack Daniel's Black in France before we left, and we opened up and once we opened it, they said, well, once you open it on the airplane, you can't take it off the plane with you. So Rob and I finished a bottle of Johnny Walker Black going back to New York. We arrived in New York with literally 25 cents between us. Luckily enough, it was enough to call a sister who came and got us at the airport, and that was Thanksgiving Day, and all we had that night was bologna sandwiches to celebrate Thanksgiving. But we were thankful to be back in the US of A.
I do remember that. And and I've got a story at the airport, but I've got something to show you. Okay.
Uh,
We took the train back to Luxembourg and then at the train station, and then we were going to go to the airport. And I took this photo right here, just outside of the Luxembourg train station, and you can see that it is faded over many, many years, and I still have it, and this year I plan to have it recolored, retouched. But this photo dates back to 1973, and just outside of the train station there in Luxembourg. Now, when we flew back to New York, because it was you, me, and Rob flew back and got to the airport, and we had all this European money and change and stuff like that, and the exchange place was closed. And I remember just dropping all of the change on the airport floor and say, this is useless. We were broke. We were hungover, blah, blah, blah. And the change is rolling all over the airport, and kind people were coming and giving it back to me. And I thought, okay.
Great memory. Yeah.
Great memory. Yes, that was long ago and far away. Now, TK, you've been to Europe, correct?
Yes, I've been there several times. Now, the countries that you're talking about are the ones that I've not been to, unfortunately. But I've been to Athens, I've been to Rome, Yugoslavia, Austria, Switzerland, England, Ireland, Scotland, but I've never made it to that part of the world for some reason. I guess I either ran out of money or ran out of time. So probably I ran out of money because I always had plenty of time.
I think that's why I came back, because we ran out of money. Yeah. But Barcelona was one of my favorite places I've ever been to. It was so gorgeous, the Temple of the Sacred Family, all the Gaudi architecture, amazing stuff.
Yes, absolutely amazing, and a fond memory. And when I got back to Dallas, I went to Toronto to visit my parents, then back to Dallas, and then started working in bars, blah, 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 blah. And then about 1974, I went to work at the Randy Tar.
I had some vague memories of the Randy Tar.
Yeah, we were having too much fun.
Boy, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Zane Wyndham, who had worked, I worked with him at the old church.
Oh, that's
After
right.
you had gone to the old church, I'd gone to the old church and worked there with Zane, and Zane ended up bartending at the old church. I mean, at Randy Tar. So he got a hold of me, or I was probably out of work. I can't remember how I got the job, but he called and said if I wanted a job at bartending. I said yeah. So I got a job bartending at the Randy Tar, which was one of Dallas's premier steak and restaurant places in Dallas.
Up there on Greenville Avenue, and very formative for me for the 5 years I worked there, because I was back from Europe, cut my hair short, wanted to find something, had already gone to SMU to study real estate, and had already had a couple of corporate jobs. So now wanting to find that one thing that I could bite into starting at about age 25, 26.
I can see,
Yeah.
Douglas, that really paid off for you. The fact that you tried all these different avenues for a career and you decide, heck with it. I want to become an actor.
Well, you see, the thing is, just before we move on to that, Stephen and TK, this is one of the old RT menus, Randy Tar. Now, Randy Tar is an English term which means horny sailor. A tar is a sailor, and Randy means you're pretty excited. So this is one of the original menus right here. I've had this for years. And just to give you a little thing here, a top sirloin, 8 ounce, for $4.90.
It was tasty.
And it was very good. And of course, the prime rib. Where's the prime rib? The prime rib, which was a huge slice of Omaha beef for $7.90, and a lobster tail for the 14-ounce was $9.50.
Well, which was the price at the time, which is, you look at it now, it's 4 times, 5 times that now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Good
TK.
So what year was this? Did this, Randy Tar? I'm trying to figure out what the minimum wage was back then, so I could figure out how many hours you'd have to work so you could eat a steak dinner there.
Well, I started in 74 and worked till 79. So minimum wage then was $3 an hour, $6
Yeah.
an hour.
275, something like that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so basically you could work 3 hours on a minimum wage job and have a nice dinner.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Now, a lot of good fun with people from the Randy Tar, and I have a list here of about 15 people here, and I'm going to mention them because we're going to forward this podcast to them. We've got Dick Malak, our European buddy. We've got Timbo Fibber, Donna Nunu Rocket. We've got Karen Bella. We've got Denise and Bambi. We've got DB. We got Earl and Hugh. We got Karen Sharp and Steve Hood, Walter and Elena. We've got Richard Denton. We've got JK, which is Hoagie's sister. We got Kay Karsten. We got Jim Ingram. We've got a whole bunch of people that we're going to send this podcast to and go down memory lane with it. But Steve and I have something that's going to be really touching. The Randy Tar had a baseball team, and this is one of the jerseys. Softball team. This is one of the jerseys right here. Okay, I've had it. And it was belonged to a very good friend of ours who was a bartender that we met at the Randy Tar, and TK. He ended up working at the working at the Cafe Pacific. This belonged to Hoagie.
Yeah. Sweet man.
Yeah,
Who we were
sweet.
roommates. I was roommates with. We were roommates with.
Well, when I went to New York City, I gave him my apartment there on
Okay.
Southwest.
Yeah.
Yes, we were all tied up together.
And he worked at Half Price Books.
Oh, he did? Well,
Yeah.
that's the next thing. Well, you were working when you finished your days at the Tar, you went to work at Half Price Books. What did you do there?
I started out at retail when they were actually over on Mockingbird, not far from the Dr. Pepper plant,
Okay.
and worked there for a couple of years. And then they moved to Northwest Highway over at the old Captain's Cargo building,
Yes,
which
yes.
was import business. Worked there for a couple of years as retail. And they started expanding a little faster than normal. They asked me to help put in a store. Actually, I helped put in the Mockingbird store, build in the fixtures, all the bookshelves, and then continued to work retail there. But they had put a new store in North Dallas. I went and helped install those bookshelves. And they finally asked if I wanted to kind of do that full time. And I said, sure. I finally figured out the alphabet. I had it A, B, C, D. Took me a couple of years to get there, but finally had the alphabet down. So, and the good thing I loved about working in a warehouse was I was away from the public, which, having been around the public, you both probably know it's better to not be around the public. So I started working after about 5 or 7 years. I started a wood shop where we built all the shelves and fixtures for the bookstores. And then I traveled around the country, and this for the next 20, 25 years, installing bookstores throughout the company. I think they now have 120 stores or thereabouts. So I traveled up to Seattle, down to Houston, San Francisco for a while. Actually, I put a store in the Bay Area in Berkeley. Moved there for a year, and helped run the bookstore, then came back to Dallas. And that's when I also got involved with Habitat around that same time. But I continued working for Half Price till I retired, and was
Yes.
on the board of directors after probably 8 or 10 years of working there. And then I was on the board of directors till I retired.
Oh, yes, and I came to visit you at the workshop, and I was quite impressed how
Okay.
clean it is, how organized it was. And TK, this is kind of interesting because they had many carpenters there working there. What Stephen instigated was that each carpenter, each workman have their tools color coordinated.
That's a
So if
great
you're
idea because, uh, if you work in any type of environment like a garage or a workshop, things just grow legs and walk away. So that's a great
Yes.
security program.
Yeah, yeah. And it was, and I started out in South Dallas in this really funky warehouse that was steel roof, steel walls, and in the summers it was brutal, but I really enjoyed again working with my hands. I had no carpentry experience, and it was actually I started that around the same time. It wasn't too long after that I did Habitat, so both of them kind of I learned from one to the other to one just carpentry skills.
right
Well,
now,
one of the
go ahead.
things I've learned in the carpentry business, I've been doing some DIY over the years, and it's always been my motto is to measure twice, cut once. Is that true?
Well, or at least measure twice and cuss once, I think is the other. But yeah, definitely it comes into play often. Yes, it's measured twice, cut once is the motto, the slogan, which it rings true all the time, sadly.
Now, let's back up a bit here, Stephen. When did you get into acting? Because you were very instrumental to me for my going to New York City in 1981 because of your acting career. And I've always stated and stated this many times, you're the one who should have gone to New York City, not me, because of your talent.
Thank you for that. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but I enjoyed doing theater. I did it actually not long after. I did a little bit. I did a high school play, which was silly, but it kind of got me involved. It's the thing that kept me in school was acting, or else I probably would have just dropped out. I was not that engaged in high school. But then afterwards, not long afterwards, a good friend of mine who actually moved to Austin, Gene Fowler, who did a lot of theater in Austin, but after high school, he got me involved in Seagoville Prison, where he was teaching prison inmates acting and how it would help them in prison. And he got me to help him do that. And it continued to keep my interest in theater. And then my high school speech teacher opened a theater in Dallas called New Arts Theater. I helped do some things there like the doorman. Eventually, he actually hired me to do some theater. I enjoyed it, and it continued to expand my theater career into the Undermain Theater in Dallas, which is still going at this pace. Also, I did some theater at a place called Stage West, which was on Greenville Avenue, not far from the Greenville Bar and Grill, and great theater there. And then down into Deep Ellum, I worked with a guy named Scott Matthews, where we did 6 to 10 plays that he wrote, and he was actually a drummer for the Butthole Surfers, which was like who would have
Butthole
known? But it
Surfers.
was
There's a name for a band.
that is who the son of Jerry Haynes, Mr. Peppermint, started the Butthole Surfers.
I
Fun
love it.
fact to know and tell. But anyway, so we did Deep Ellum in theater, and then I did uh, a film or two that were fun. But what then I found Habitat, and my whole life kind of geared towards that.
Now, when did you start with Habitat?
Habitat was 1991.
And you've been with them ever since, right?
Been with them ever, been a volunteer ever since. While I worked, I did almost every Saturday. Um, because I worked Monday through Friday, so I took Saturdays off and would then volunteer with them. Traveled, I wouldn't say traveled the world, but I've done a lot of traveling building with Habitat. I've had the honor of doing 5 or 6 what was called Jimmy Carter work projects. One was in Vox, Hungary. Another one was in Seoul, South Korea. not Seoul, but in South Korea. And then throughout the US, I did Houston, New York, Biloxi, several other places. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
And you're still engaged with Habitat for Humanity.
yes, when I retired in 2016, yeah, 10 years ago now. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Anyway, I volunteer now typically 2 days a week, usually Wednesday and Saturday, sometimes Thursday, Saturday. Yeah. Luckily enough, the sleet apocalypse, they closed today, or I would be there now.
Okay, Stephen, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing, dedicating your life to Habitat for Humanity. And also the other aspect that any a half-price bookstore that we go into, we can touch those shelves, and that is you.
I feel very, yeah, I guess I'm very proud to have helped expand bookstores and knowledge through books. And then again, now it's now 35 years with Habitat of building homes. It's something I love and I'm very proud of. Now, one thing I'll digress just for a moment, although it's still about Habitat. It was about 2 years ago, Clarice Tinsley, who is a local newscaster, contacted Habitat and wanted to do some interviews with some people that had been there a while. She didn't interview me, but somebody at Dallas Habitat interviewed me and then sent the info to her. Well, I'm known at Habitat as Laird Seybold, Laird, because many years ago they gave me a square foot of land in Scotland at a land preserve to show their appreciation for what I'd done. If you own land in Scotland, you are a laird. It's just a title. But now people at Habitat, because my name tag says Laird, thinks that's my name. So Clarice Tinsley, and she did a little like a minute or two thing of me, and the whole time she called me Laird Seybold. At first, I was irked because like my name's Steven Seybold, but finally I went, "Oh, that's kind of nice." She calls me Laird. Well, right before it aired, she contacted the Dallas Habitat person to ask how many houses have I built with the Habitat because I've been there for so long. And I told the Habitat folk, I don't know, hundreds, I don't know. And I said, really, what you need to tell them is not nearly enough. And that was the last thing Clarice Tinsley said, which was great. She said, when asked how many houses he has built, Laird Seybold said, not nearly enough, which is sad and true. And it's an honest answer.
That's a beautiful, beautiful answer. And Laird, since you own land in Scotland, do we kiss your ring or a little lower? Do we wear a tartan for you or something like that? I don't know. So, do we call you a duke?
That's all it is, Laird.
Okay, so a very important question. There in the background, you've got all these bookshelves. Did you build them?
Bought those at a secondhand store. I know better than to use my own experience to build bookshelves. Well, and that said, actually, kind of similar to that is with over the years, people would ask what I do at Half Price Books. And I said, well, I build bookstores for bookshelves for Half Price Books. They go, oh, you're an architect. I said, no, I build bookshelves for Half Price Books. And they go, oh, you're a carpenter. No, I build bookshelves for Half Price Books. It was very specific. Anyway.
Oh, that is just beautiful, Stephen. It is so good talking to you. And do you have any questions? TK, you were going to ask Stephen something about popcorn?
Stephen, by listening to you and Douglas, I must say that you've traveled the world. You've seen a lot. I know you've been here in Dallas for many years, just as well as I, and you've seen great expansion. So, if there was one little bit of tidbit of information that you'd want to share with Douglas and I on whatever subject you want, what would be your phrase?
Would say, well, two things: read a book, build a house.
Now, do you build the house first or do you read the book first?
Well, it's your choice. You can read the book on how to build a house or build the house so you can read the book in a dry area.
Dry area as far as lack of alcohol or
Well, like a roof over your head.
oh,
Roof
okay,
over your head.
okay. Well,
There's
see,
the house.
Stephen, we got to be very specific here, because, dry, especially as you know, here in Texas, there are what they call dry areas, which means there's no alcohol allowed, which I really stay away from like a plague, but that's another story. But hey, I really enjoyed listening to you and Doug and talking with you. It's just been a real pleasure, and I'm familiar with a lot of your work
Thank you.
because of being here in Dallas. So congratulations, and my hat's off to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for having me. It's
Okay.
not been as painful as I feared.
Stephen, we have a little present for you and a couple of your friends. Doug the neighbor runs a top of Possum Trot flipper walk every year where we raise money for Dell Children's Cancer Fund. And we have some keychain flippers that we wish to send to you. I'll get your address later. And with this whole aspect of flip off big C. So we are going to send these to you as a gift, a small token for your work that you are doing for the community. Very admirable, my friend. Very admirable.
Thank you. Thank you. I love doing it. So if you do something you love, life is good.
Life is good. And we can end it on that. TK, go Cowboys.
Stephen, what do you have to say for yourself?
I will repeat what I just said. Read a book, build a house.
Aaron, go brawl.